Hello everyone and welcome to another incredible fighting game from round 5 of this year's European Club Cup. It is Max Warmerdam versus Gukesh D, the world classical champion, and Max is having a pretty great tournament. He already racked up 2 wins, and in round 1 he even defeated Magnus. Not Magnus Carlsen, he defeated German international master Magnus Ermich, but still, I mean, very, very impressive stuff. And Max is one of those people who I would say can be guilty of always being on the receiving end of okay, most often a brilliancy and on the giving end and on the receiving end, but you know, if not a brilliancy, then a really exciting game. And this game is no different. So yeah, let's check it out and let's see if Gukesh can continue his run. He already entered the world top 10. Can he go beyond that? So great opportunity for Max. He has the white pieces. Let's see what he can do. We have pawn to d4, pawn to d5. c4, we have pawn to e6 and knight to f3. We have knight to f6, so a standard queen's gambit declined, and Max goes for pawn to g3. He opts for the Catalan opening, where you will usually see bishop e7, d captures on c4, or bishop to b4 with check. Those are the top 3, and if you want to play the Catalan or against the Catalan, this is an absolute must at the very top level. Even beyond that, you would have to know the top 10 continuations, I would say. But okay, bishop to b4 check. We have knight bd2, and now usually you will see castles or d captures on c4, but Gukesh already deviates very early on. He plays pawn to a5, and this is almost unheard of in top-level play. Bluebaum played one game against Marc-Andrea Maurizi that ended in a draw with this pawn to a5 idea. Other than that, pretty much unseen in top-level chess. We have bishop to g2, pawn to a4, very interesting, castles kingside, and now knight to c6. Although not what the great Philidor would recommend, he would probably, you know, advocate for c5 or maybe even c6. But here you could very easily get into trouble. For example, castle seems like you're naturally developing everything, and after pawn to e4, it's already very hard to develop. Of course, capturing only improves the activity of white's pieces, and knight bd7 e5, black already has problems here. So that's why knight to c6 is the best move, according to the engine, and also it's the only move that was ever played here. Queen to c2, we have castles kingside, and the rook to e1. Sorry, not rook to e1, rook to d1. We have bishop back to e7. Now that the white king castle, the bishop is not very useful there. And there are 2 games where pawn to e4 was played. Here we have pawn to e3, which is the top move recommended by the engine. And it is now, as of move 10, that we have a completely new game. As you can see by the situation on the clock, Max already burned 23 minutes off his clock. And Gukesh is still on full time. But as in the previous game, when we reach a new position, you have to figure out a game plan. And this is where Gukesh spends 17 minutes deciding a knight to b4, because really there's a lot to calculate here. So probably you can go back queen b1, kick away the knight, and then bring the queen back to c2. But Max always accepts a challenge. He goes queen to c3, and now you have to be a little bit worried. D captures on c4. And what is this move? Well, you're sort of inviting queen captures or knight captures, but if the knight moves, then knight e4 is just very annoying for white, to the point of maybe even being lost. And if you play queen captures, then there are ideas like b5. If you capture, then the bishop comes into the game. If you bring the queen back, let's say queen e2, bishop b7, and now a3, knight c2. Again, you can play it, but it's giving black way too much, way too early. So Max finds the absolute best refutation of Gukesh's idea, and that is pawn to a3. He invites the knight to d3, but the knight on d3 doesn't really have a future. You're just going to capture, and once you capture the bishop, yes, you've eliminated the bishop pair, but you've fully developed the white, and you still have a lot to do in terms of development. So black would definitely have problems here. So that's why knight f to d5, going after the white queen. Queen captures on c4, and knight to b6. Queen back to c3, and knight to c6. We have queen to c2, and now knight to a5. So we often say this, the knight on the rim is dim or grim, but if the knight comes to b3 or c4 at some point, could be could be very good for the knight. And also, you are now able to play c6, which will sort of limit the power of this light square bishop, of the Catalan bishop. We have rook b1, preparing you-know-what. We have bishop to d7 and knight to e5. Beautiful square for the knight. Bishop e8, nicely controlling that knight, and now knight to e4. So we could say that Max solved all of his opening issues and is now just enjoying a very nice position. The situation on the clock even being in Max's favor. And the question is, do you or do you not play pawn to f6 here? It's a question in many such lines. The knight on e5 is always annoying. And while Gukesh wants to play it, he wants to improve his position a bit further. Knight d5. We have knight c5, again creating another monster knight, which you just can't allow to remain there. Yes, you would like to kick it away with b6, even though it would be a little bit dangerous, but the a4 pawn is hanging, so you have to tend to that. And the bishop captures on c5 is how Gukesh does it. We have d captures, and now queen to c8, just unpinning from the d file, and saying, okay, Max, let's see what you do here. Max goes bishop to d2, pawn to f6 chases away the knight, and now first bishop captures on a5. We have rook captures on a5 and knight to d3. We have knight back to e7 and now queen to c4, putting pressure on this diagonal. Bishop to f7 by Gukesh, and now queen back to c3, attacking the rook, and rook goes back to a8. And here, believe it or not, as I always say, you should always check it. Pawn to b4. Best move recommended by the engine, as it often is. You just open up the b file, because if white doesn't capture, then the pawns are just too strong. Captures, and black will have very little he can offer here in terms of actually not losing that pawn. And you don't even have to capture now. You can choose to capture it whenever, because white is just so much better here. So that is probably what Max should have done, but he played knight to b4, and now Gukesh has only one move that allows him to sort of survive this, and he plays it. Pawn to c6, and now after a couple of more moves, yes, Max does get the rook on d6, but after knight f5, chasing the rook away, rook d3 and pawn to e5, looking at this position and that position where, you know, the b file could be opened and you could have all of that pressure on the b7 pawn, I think Max realizes that maybe he could have done a little bit better. But okay, he burned a lot of Gukesh's time, and still 12 more moves to be made until time control is reached. We have rook b to d1, bishop to e6, and knight to c2. We have queen to c7 and pawn to e4. Chasing the knight away from such an active square, and you do control d4, so the knight has to go back. Knight h6, we have knight e3, probably going to f5, but, you know, you never know. We have queen to a5 offering a queen trade, and Max declines. Queen to c1, we have knight f7 and knight to f5. And okay, you could easily capture that knight, but it would be allowing too much. And the pawn here is very, very strong. The rook can just come to d7, and it's going to be a problem. Even if you go rook a8, you can still play rook d7, and black will have problems here. So that's why rook fd8 right away. So now you can counter those rooks, but here comes knight to d6. Okay. Obviously, this knight cannot remain here. We have knight captures on d6, and capturing with the pawn is nice, but how are you ever advancing that pawn? The two rooks behind the passed pawn is great, but here there just doesn't seem to be a good way for you to make something out of it. So after knight captures, we have rook captures, king to f7, and now bishop to f1, preparing to trade off those bishops with bishop to c4 at some point. Rook captures, c captures, and now king to f8. We have king to g2 and the bishop to b3. Attacking the rook on d1, we have rook to d3 and now rook to d8. Okay, the rook is in front of the passed pawn, but you have to do it. I mean, you can't just allow that pawn to go d7, d8 at some point. And also maybe it's possible to attack it somehow. We have bishop to e2 and now bishop back to e6, not allowing any bishop to g4 to be used. Pawn to h3, pawn to c5, and now bishop to g4. Offering a trade of bishops, bishop to f7, Gukesh declines. And pawn to h4. We have queen to b5, now putting pressure on the rook and on that pawn. It's defended by the queen for the moment, but, you know, a very, very active square for the black queen. And also you can retreat easily if needed. We have queen to c3, defending the rook, and now pawn to b6. And here, Max could choose to play something like rook d2. You play it, and you just wait for Gukesh to find an active plan. And objectively, there is none here. But that is not the kind of player that Max is. He doesn't just wait for things to happen. He plays pawn to f4. And now after e captures on f4, pawn to e5. He wants to beat Gukesh. He has the white pieces, and he wants the full point. And the question is, what can Gukesh do? Does he capture, or does he play something else? Well, it's hard to pinpoint what Max had in mind if, let's say, captures, and rook e8. If d7, other than d7, you really don't have all that much. If the queen moves, just h5 is nice, and if d7, you can just trade. Yes, you get another queen, rook to e8, and now after queen d6, check king g8. How do you continue here? The queen cannot capture because the rook would hang. If the pawn captures, then queen captures on b2 comes with check, and black is just winning. So you'd have to play rook d2, and then after something like, and okay, now the threat is bishop d7 to win material. But after rook f8 and g captures on f4, this is what you get. Maybe white can survive this, but white is down a pawn, and also the black king is much safer, so it's hard to say. Probably, there just isn't anything better, so Max thought that, he just... this was the only way for him to win the game. I don't think he was even considering how to just hold. And another thing, against incredibly strong players like Gukesh, trying to just hold almost never works. So pawn to c4, instead of capturing right away, Gukesh first makes way for his queen to be able to enter the game, but also does it with tempo. So rook d2, and now f captures on e5. Okay, g captures on f4, e captures, queen d4, still very, very dangerous. That d pawn is a monster. h5, we have bishop to f3, and now queen to f5 by Gukesh, with some ideas of queen g6 check, or even queen to f6 going after the h4 pawn. All depends on what Max plays. And it comes with the offer of a b6 pawn, and there's really nothing better than to capture that pawn. So Max just does it. We have queen to f6 going after the h4 pawn, and believe it or not, you should go rook d4 here. It's such a wild move to play, because after rook d4, if you capture on h4, then there's rook captures on f4, and all of a sudden it's just a draw. If queen captures, you're gonna no. If queen captures, then it's even winning. Queen captures on d8 with check, and there's nothing for you to do. If bishop d8, you can just go queen e7 check, pick up the bishop, and then the pawn is winning. So that would have probably been best. But queen to f2 was played by Max, now already below 1 minute on the clock. King to g8 by Gukesh, and pawn to d7. Okay, we have bishop to e6. Now the pawn is lost, but also you will get something in return. Bishop captures on h5, rook captures on d7, rook captures, and bishop captures. And this is the position now. Gukesh is up a pawn, but also we could say that his king is a little bit safer than Max's king, and with so little time on the clock, this is not an easy position to play. We have king to h2, and now queen to f5. Also, bishop to c6 is very nice, but queen to f5 is sufficient. Bishop to e2 going for captures with check, but now queen h3 check, king g1, and bishop to c6. Not even worried about captures on c4. The king will just come to h7. We could even show it like captures king h7, and what do you do here? If bishop to d3 with check, the queen is covering that. If queen to c2 with check, you go king h6, and now no more useful checks. When I say, sometimes you guys are weirded out by this, I say no more checks, and then you guys say, well, queen g6 is a check. But yeah, obviously, I'm not talking about that. So bishop to c6, queen to h2, offering a queen trade, but of course, no reason for Gukesh to oblige. Queen to e3 check, queen to f2, and queen to e4, threatening mate in one. We have queen to h2, and now pawn to f3. And that's pretty much all there is. We have bishop to f1, queen g4 check, king to f2, and queen to d4 check. And he was in this position on move 64, the best kind of resignation, that Max Warmerdam resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You can go right or left. If you go king g3, then it's made in two, queen e5 check, and now you either give up the queen, or king h3 and bishop to d7 is checkmate. Or if you go king to e1, it's a bit more work, but still, I mean, queen e3 check, king to d1, f2, now threatening queen e1, and what? You can give a nice check, king to h7, queen b4 to stop that, but now bishop f3 with check, king to c2, bishop to queen e4 with check, king to c1, and now queen to e1 with check is sufficient. You either get another queen into the game or king c2, and then you get checkmated. Bishop to e4 check, bishop to d3, and now you can capture with the bishop, but I always say it is way cooler to checkmate with the less valuable piece. Captures, and this will now be checkmate. And interestingly, how the move that Gukesh decided on move 5, advancing the pawn to a5 and a4, also helps out with delivering checkmate to the white king. So it's a really, really beautiful game, and yeah, I think like this is the moment like we had in the previous game that Gukesh played, where he has this position where he sort of can maybe maintain equilibrium, just rook d2 holds. But yeah, like I said, Max is not that kind of a player. He's famous for taking down strong players and brilliancies, and some of the greatest games shown on this channel were played by Max Warmerdam. I will even put one in the description below if you guys want to check it out. So yeah, very nicely done by Gukesh. He gains more rating points, but he's still world number 10. But it is good that he's playing well. He's back in the top 10, and we are waiting for him to reclaim his rightful place. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Beautifully done by both of them, but it is the world champion who takes this one. I would like to thank P.A. Bauer, Gerard St. Pierre, Brazos Valley Chess Society, Francesco Corradi, and Uzi Shalev for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.